So I think that in Rhode Island, from Fox Point to New Bedford to even Newport, the Toro Synagogue um, was Sephardic Portuguese Jews that founded
I
and were
didn't know
part of
that.
that. Yes, and if you go and you take a tour, the names are there, like Rodriguez, I believe De Silva. There are a lot of Portuguese integrated into Newport that were Sephardic Jews.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on Church and State. Today, we are talking to Rhode Island Day of Portugal President, Ana Isabel dos Reis Couto. She has been president now for several years. And so we thought, why not talk to someone in the Portuguese community who, because I believe it's Rhode Island or maybe Massachusetts, we're always, a little war there, who has the highest percentage of Portuguese Americans in their state. And Rhode Island has a very high percentage. So whether you have a deep connection to Portuguese culture or you're simply just curious about the community, we're happy you joined us today. And Ana, say hello to the listeners.
Hello, it's a pleasure being here. I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to a very successful podcast.
Thanks for joining us, Ana. Nice to see you again. Thank you for always hosting us at these Day of Portugal events. I always look forward to it and bringing our kids to it, whether it's at Waterfire or some of the restaurants that you guys go to. It's just really great how you pull people together. Love it.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ana.
No. That's fine. I just said that I think it's great that we need to start our young children and our children to bring them back to what our culture is really about, and it really starts when they're young. So, great job! You're ahead of the game.
Well, whenever I've been lucky enough to be at the State House when they have other cultural events, sometimes it's Greek Independence Day or Spanish Heritage or Hispanic Heritage. I love being able to expand my knowledge and really kind of like delve into that culture for a little bit, learn a little bit about their food and their especially folklore dancing. But I just love to see that and the traditional dress that people usually wear. So I'm so thankful that we can do that in Rhode Island as well for the Portuguese culture. But tell us a little bit about Day of Portugal and how you got involved.
So Rhode Island Day of Portugal has been around, well, some say much earlier than 1978, but I'm going to say by what's on record, which is 1978. So it's 46 years. Our mission is to preserve the culture, the language, the cuisine, the dance, and everything that embraces Portugalidade or the Portuguese. We do a lot of different events as fundraisers, but as well as each fundraiser has somewhat a connection to our culture. And I think that Rhode Island Day of Portugal does a good job at making sure that the culture is present in many different facets, as well as inclusion with other communities. There's so much information that I could say, but a little bit, if people are interested in learning, they could just look up on our website. We have all the info there.
Yeah. So Day of Portugal, it's there's because I'm not Portuguese, and I married into it or married up with my wife. So I was exposed to suddenly all of the wonderful aspects of Portuguese culture, not just the food, which is amazing, or the desserts, or the espressos, the cafes, but just the hospitality. I can remember visiting my wife, for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and seeing her aunt and her uncle and her mom, and like just how warm they are and how they immediately just welcomed me into their family. So I've always appreciated the Portuguese culture, but I never knew what Day of Portugal was. And my understanding, this is a day that's celebrated around the world by the Portuguese people. What's significant about this day? And then maybe you could expand beyond even just the literal Day of Portugal to the organization, what it does around the state of Rhode Island.
So, Day of Portugal is celebrated across all continents of Portuguese-speaking people, and it's to celebrate Luís de Camões and the Lusíadas. He was a literary poet that has put us on the map. Let's put it that way. He's like our Shakespeare, and he made a lot of differences with that, with the poetry and all that he did throughout the navigation. Like he went to a lot of different with the explorers on the ship and the navigators, and he would document all the tribulations and all the accomplishments and all the people that he came privy to, and he absorbed a lot of that. And when you read his poems, they really speak to what our navigators and kind of like what our adventure and our courage kind of like went out, if that makes any sense. So
Mhm.
it's a day that we celebrate Luís Camões
That's
and
interesting to me.
all his accomplishments. Like when
It's
you
interesting.
read the yes. So if you could buy the Lusíadas that has the Portuguese, the new version into the new Portuguese, or you could do the new version of the Lusíadas into English. I'm pretty sure that there's a copy. And
Hmm.
that would be very interesting to be able to read that and understand why we celebrate that day.
Yeah, it's the only thing that seems comparable to it would be like the 4th of July for Americans, right? Where they're celebrating their independence, very patriotic. You see American flags everywhere, there's fireworks, but it's connected to America's independence, that fight, to free ourselves from British tyranny. Um, but with Day of Portugal, it's less political and it seems like it's much more cultural, right?
Yes, correct. It is.
Yeah, that's
It's all
interesting.
about the culture and, where all that the Portuguese kind of like encompasses through
Hmm.
the poetry that he wrote.
Wow, that's great. Um, And then I was wondering about some of the other events that are sponsored by Day of Portugal. Day of Portugal, what day is that?
It's June 10th,
June 10th. Okay. And then there are
which
other
is the
events throughout
birth.
the year.
Sorry, go ahead.
There are other events throughout the year, though, that Day of Portugal sponsors as well.
Yes, yes, we have. So we do a golfing tournament. We do a 5K to try and see if we can get uh, to bring to the community, to the younger, more health kind of like community. We have our gastronomy, which is when you go to Portugal and you have like a Feira de Gastronomia, where there's different tents or restaurants that participate and bring a little bit of the different cuisine or innovative cuisine to the community, and you can test that as long as along with the rancho folclórico or the folklore dancers. Um, and just really trying to make sure that our gastronomy event really encompasses almost a well-rounded culture
Mhm.
event with the food and the dance, which is very, very present and very important to our culture. I remember like my grandfather sitting around the fire and playing the concertina, and where all the kids would just chime in and we'd all just dance. I still remember that, and
Mhm.
I think that's just a key part of the Portuguese. No matter whether you're from the Azores, Madeira, even the colonial, we kind of like always embrace that.
Mhm.
We also have the taste. We call it the wine dinner at Capitol Grill every year, which always sells out, to also celebrate the new fusion of our kitchen, of our cuisine, how you can embrace traditional, but yet make it innovative and represent all the new chefs, upcoming chefs that are in our community. It's a way to kind of spotlight them as well as traditional with a fusion of modern cuisine.
That's great.
What
I'm
else?
pulling up some pictures just from the website so people can kind
Yeah,
of
I'm
get
getting
a
distracted
sense
just
for it.
looking at those. Beautiful. Yeah,
We have
that's really
Coral
nice.
Irança, for example. We also do the Coral Irança Portuguesa. They do the traditional chants and songs of choral. Um, what else do we have? We have art exhibits that we put together to bring different art. And then, of course, there's the festival that encompasses water, fire when it's possible, the Chama de Portugalidade, or flame of the Portuguese spirit. And then, of course, try to make sure within that day that we have the food, the dance, the language is spoken, and we open it up to the community so that they can feel what Portuguese really means.
That's beautiful.
Could you speak to that a little bit? What are some of the maybe the ways that the Portuguese culture and its history is kind of interwoven into Rhode Island's history, or even America's history?
So the Portuguese, since even the beginning of the formation of the United States, has had a huge influence historically. One of the first Portuguese as well in the U.S. actually fought in the Civil War, so we go back quite a while. And I think we are very integrated without forgetting our own culture. We're very integrated into the American fabric, into the state of Rhode Island and our whole, the US as a nation, right? And I think from masonry to cooks to jewelry to textile industry to farming, we're there, we're present. We may not so much maybe speak the language because generations have come forward, and as you know, your children tend to like lose a little bit of the language, but we've been pretty much integrated in our society and in the US for a very, very long time, and we've contributed a lot, from the whaling industry to the navigations in Newport to maritime industry. We're there, from cabinet makers to construction to doctors to lawyers to nurses and CNAs. I mean, pretty much we're very diverse and very integrated. And I think we contribute a lot, and we can't forget that. Sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, they're integrated into the trades and but one of the things that I think about, especially at the State House when we talk about Day of Portugal, is I believe the Founding Fathers toasted to Madeira wine the independence of America. And I know that Portugal was one of the first nations to recognize America. So there is even not just like recent history, but we're talking about even back to like the founding of this nation. That I think it's pretty cool that Madeira wine made it all the way here to George Washington so that they could celebrate our independence.
Yes, agree. So there's a relationship between Madeira and Portugal and England, or the United Kingdom. You know, we've always had a huge ally from the beginning of the kings and queens along with it. So Madeira was a prominent island that contributed a lot to Portugal as well, and to the United Kingdom. I don't have all the specifics, but it's
neither do I. Don't worry.
Well, just as someone who's fascinated with history, I love hearing how, you know, at the celebration of our independence, that there was Madeira wine, Portuguese wine, that they were celebrating. That was the drink of choice, I guess, for our founding fathers. And then to hear that Portugal was one of the first countries to recognize America. And then, Anna, I believe you said that as far back as the Civil War, there were Portuguese Americans who were fighting in the Civil War. So,
yes,
really just a rich history there. And it seems that the Portuguese have even outgrown where they initially would settle, right? I think of India Point Park has a long history of Portuguese, right? Portuguese Americans settling there. Jess and I met in East Providence and grew up and were married there. And I'm so grateful that the Portuguese were in East Providence. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met this amazing woman. And then Fall River and New Bedford. But, you know, as recent as when we moved up to North Smithfield, both of our neighbors are Portuguese. And we find parks up here named after Portuguese Rhode Islanders. So it's they're everywhere, you know, and I say that in the best way possible.
Yes, agree. I mean, I think there was a period of time in Rhode Island's history, or even the US, where a lot of the Portuguese would not want to be known that they were Portuguese because of the stigma that all immigrants face, right? And which is kind of sad, but it is true. And I think now we're more proud and more open to showing who we are. And I think that is super important because that's who we are. And not, I'm not just saying even us Portuguese, but most immigrants at there were a point in time were like, no, 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 I don't want to show that I'm this because they're afraid of. So we, I think we are more now cognitive presence, I'm going to say, of
Hmm.
being Portuguese and less afraid of saying we are Portuguese than in the past.
Hmm.
And, you know, like in the 1920s and during the Depression, for example, there's actually a text that says that Portuguese were considered like they only knew Portuguese because they were hardworking, they were great masons, and they're good house cleaners for the women, right? And I took that. I mean, I understand that those were the times, but they were only known for that because you came, you worked, and you didn't really like celebrate
Hmm.
your roots
Yeah,
because of that. Um, and I think now we're at a time where look at Portugal. Oh my goodness. I mean, tourism wise, it exploded. We've won prize upon prize for tourism and cuisine and culture and history, you know. So I think that in Rhode Island, from Fox Point to New Bedford to even Newport, the Toro Synagogue um, was Sephardic Portuguese Jews that founded
I
and were
didn't know
part of
that.
that. Yes, and if you go and you take a tour, the names are there, like Rodriguez, I believe the Silva. There are a lot of Portuguese integrated into Newport that were Sephardic Jews. Um, so when you
Yeah,
think
people don't
about,
realize the Inquisition wasn't just the Spanish Inquisition. It
no,
happened
no,
in Portugal as well.
yes, yes, it did, and a lot of the Portuguese Judea, and not just the Jews, the Portuguese Jews, but also other nationalities that, like the Gypsies, that might not um, fit the belong of the Catholic Church back then. They were expelled or you died. So you either conformed, left, or you died. So when you choose, and I think that the Portuguese after that are very integrated in other parts of the world and other communities. Yeah.
Yeah, you were just talking about how immigrants usually when they come to this country they face a certain amount of stigma. And there was, and I don't have it on me because I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I remember reading just a post on Twitter by one of the reporters that was talking about certain immigrants to the United States, and they mentioned the Portuguese how if they would, as long as they don't leave this certain section of Providence and kind of mess up the nicer parts of Providence, keep the immigrants, in certain sections. And so I love how you pointed out. It's sad that it happens, but it seems to happen to every ethnic group that comes here. The
Absolutely.
Irish experienced it as well. The Italians and unfortunately Hispanic individuals. But I'm glad to see that as a nation, we're just more inclusive of other cultures. But
Yes.
I wanted to talk about Fox Point because some people. I heard a lot of questions like, "Well, why is Fox Point not Fox Point, India Point being renamed to Portuguese Parkway?" And can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Fox Point was one of the hubs of most of the Portuguese when they came to Rhode Island. That's pretty much where they settled. And that was the entryway in many ways to the state of Rhode Island. And I think Rhode Island Day of Portugal's endeavor of Orlando Mateos to try and get India, I should say, India Street to Portugal Parkway
Yeah.
is fitting because we have such a long history at that specific location. And it's always been revered for the last, I don't know, maybe 120 something years to 150 years, that was always a prominent Portuguese kind of like area of immigrating to. It's where the families all called each other. Um, so I think it's fitting that we do put it Portugal Parkway. Um, I wish I could elaborate more,
No, that's okay. That's
but
great.
you know,
Well, then,
it,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Then I was thinking about because we're talking Fox Point, Friends Market,
Yes,
and how long it's been there. I remember my dad going there to get o jornal, and my padrinho going there. Padrinho is godfather, going there to see Senhor Poderoso, and how important that market was to the community, but even Senhor Poderoso and his wife as well to the community.
yeah, they definitely. I think that Senhor Pedroso is a strong pillar in of our community from way back. You know, he helped a lot of people settle. He would help them find jobs. He was just an amazing person, and his wife as well, very gentle. And I think that Friends Market is really a pillar in Fox Point, or that section where the market is, that served not just so much the Portuguese, but now is serving other communities as well. And exactly, like my mother would go there and buy the Crónica, which is a Portuguese small little book that had recipes and beauty information, almost like housekeeping journal kind of, but small. And she would go there and get it. Or Jornal da Bola for my dad, because I've got a bola, you know. So I think it's great, and I wish we had more historic places like that so that we could celebrate them. Um, so I think our Portuguese community is very fortunate that we had such a place to go to, that we could feel a familiarity and
Hmm.
spoken the language as well when we're asking for something. And at times I would even imagine that he was a psychologist or a psychiatrist listening to people's, stories and what their issues are. And from there it's sent to helping out.
Hmm. Um, Anna, there have been a number of accomplishments that Day of Portugal has kind of spearheaded and helped to helped to see created. You know, there was the Portuguese Parkway, India Point Park, and then there was the Veterans Memorial as well. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit. I was honored to be there, obviously with Jessica as well, as she's serving as a state senator. But there was that memorial that was placed at the Veterans Memorial Cemetery as well.
Yes. So this all started, and I'm going to say divine providence is how I think it happens. So I do a lot of volunteerism. Like I've been part of Day of Portugal since 1984, and then I was on the committee up until 1988. After 88, um, life changes. You go your own way. You get married. You have kids, and your life changes. So then, about 6, 7 years ago, we did volunteering at the Veteran Cemetery. So one of my, I'm not going to say passions, but one of my close to heart is our veterans. I don't think that we do enough for them. So every time I would go to the Veteran Cemetery, and we have to lift now I forget what they called. The markers.
Oh,
So on the floor, they're called the markers. So with time, they settle. So we would go there as part of the company that I work for, as a part of our volunteer spearing. We organized and we went there, and I started volunteering. So I would look at the markers and I'm like, wait, this is a Portuguese last name. Oh, there's
mm,
another one Portuguese last name. Oh, there's another Portuguese last name. And then it's a very serene cemetery. So I would go around and I'd look at all the memorials that were there, and I didn't see anything for the Portuguese servicemen and women in the US. So I started questioning, and then there was the Cape Verdean one that was recently built. And I started saying to myself, someday when the time is right, if God is willing, I will make sure that I will somehow help build a memorial for all the Portuguese and Luso-American descendants that paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Mm.
Time went on, and then I got back involved with Rhode Island Day of Portugal in 2019. And then I became president in 2020. And that's the light bulb kind of went on and said, oh, wait, this is a great chance to be able to do it through an organization that represents the Portuguese. So I put the idea to the board accepted it. I started the ball rolling. COVID hit, things stopped. Uh, COVID started lifting up. I reached back to the Veterans Affairs office, who connected me through Jim at the cemetery, and we started again the ball rolling. A week later, I get an introduction through email from the director of the cemetery, connecting me with Father Victor Silva, who shared the same vision. And the two of us started working on the project. And then I started building on, okay, if we're going to do this, what is the criteria? How do we want it to be? I wanted it to be, and we all agreed on this. We wanted it to be to represent the past, the present, the future veterans. We wanted to make sure that it had natural grasses, that the memorial represented all that is Portugal, from the Azores to Madeira to Portugal itself. And that's how we ended up. And we put out the call, and Sid Silveira actually, out of the blue, popped up. There were others that kind of like that we reached out to because we didn't have anyone come forward. And then they kind of turned us down, and they said, oh, for whatever reason. And that's really how it all came about. And we started with the vision, we started with the design, we accepted the design, we put it out, then we started fundraising. And thanks to the House of Representatives that finished the kind of like helped us finish the goal of the fundraising. We did a lot of hard work. Father Victor was instrumental in doing a lot of the work. He physically hauled 300 cobblestones that came from Pawtucket and some from Fox Point as well, if I'm not mistaken. Watch me be mistaken. But they came from a location, and we repurposed them because they were going to throw them out. So that's the circle you see around the memorial. So that's kind of like how it all came about. And now it represents not commercialism, not sponsorship, but a location and a memorial of respect, honor, and dignity for all those that pay the ultimate sacrifice.
That's beautiful. And I thank you and Father Victor Silva for taking that on and bringing it into a fruition, because I have been to the Veterans Cemetery and there are lots of monuments, but if it wasn't for your efforts, there wouldn't be one for Portuguese immigrants and Portuguese Americans.
Definitely. And so thank you for your support as well, and all that you do as part of the Senate as well. So that's amazing. But it's one of, I think, Rhode Island Day of Portugal was the stepping stone to having that made or built. But outside of that, it's really community came together in the fundraising to give, to make this happen, and all the hard work that we did in making sure that this was built for those that are often very forgotten. The families don't forget, but I think the community needs to be more appreciative of our veterans and all those that perished.
Yeah,
that's true. And there were a lot of families represented on that day that
Yes.
were groundbreaking. And you could see it on their faces. They were so happy to be able to come back and remember their loved ones. So honestly, kudos to you. Thank you for taking that on. David, do you have any other questions?
well, I mean, as I was listening to Anna talk about this, I'm just reminded of some of the values that I see over and over again, kind of represented in the best of the Portuguese community, in the way that they do show hospitality, to new people like myself, um, and then the way that they honor their elders, they honor those who have, fought for their country and fought for the freedoms that we get to enjoy. There really is a culture of honor and hospitality, family, hard work. Some of the hardest working people I know are Portuguese people. My wife happens to be one of them, amazingly hardworking. So just, I feel so honored that I've been welcomed into the community as a guest over and over again. So thank you, Anna, for all your hospitality. If um, if if somebody is listening to this and they're Portuguese American and they want to get more involved, they want to volunteer, or they want to be a part of the next Day of Portugal water fire, or the parades, or any of the other number of festivals that you guys are part of, how would they do that?
Very easy. So on our website, we have a chat feature, we have a subscription button, we have an email address that's info@RI Day of Portugal. They can click on that. It goes to the president or the person monitoring the chats. And basically, just email and say, I'm interested in participating, whatever role may be, or if there's a specific role that you're interested in, do that as well, or just call any of our executive committee members. Just, I mean, my email is out there, my information is out there, most of our executive committee information is out there, but the easiest way, honestly, is through that email or the chat on our website that goes
And the
directly
website
into my mailbox.
and the
And the
website is ridayofportugal.org,
correct. Yep.
ridayofportugal.org. Check it
Yep.
out. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you, Anna, for joining us today. It was really our honor to be able to talk to you about something you care so passionately about, Day of Portugal, bringing Portuguese Americans, Portuguese Rhode Islanders together. Even, it's just cool to even see the Portuguese ambassador, who will come and speak and meet with people from our state. So really, really special. But thank you for being with us today, and thank you for telling us about your organization. And we hope that more people get involved.